economy back on track.
I expect early childhood educators to be miracle workers. We need to see significant new funding to support childcare if we want this to work.
Childcare centres in Ontario have been closed for months, but news they'll soon be allowed to reopen isn't being welcomed by everyone. Now, with businesses reopening and more parents heading back to work, the government is allowing childcare centres to open their doors again. But some say today's announcement falls far short of what's really needed. Miranda Redekop now with the latest.
Friday, June the 12th, all childcare centres in the province will be allowed to reopen with some restrictions.
That means your child's daycare will not look like it used to. Among the restrictions, a maximum of 10 people per room, including staff and children, screening for symptoms, no visitors, extra cleaning, removal of all toys that could spread germs, and all centers must have a COVID-19 response plan in case someone is exposed to the virus.
We will take every measure necessary to keep the kids and the staff safe and healthy.
The government says there should be enough spots for families who want them.
Should a parent not want to put their child back in a center, that is your choice. You will not lose your space, and nor will you be charged.
The ministry says that policy will extend throughout the province's emergency order. As for the extra costs,
the province is providing more latitude and more support, for example, for cleaning, for additional custodial staff that may be required within centers, including for PPE.
But childcare advocates say there are many more expenses. One Toronto daycare sent a letter to parents in advance of this announcement, saying with smaller class sizes, its center could cost 3 or 4 times more to run.
For them to assume that childcare centres could scramble to reopen with just a few days' notice and no new funding is frankly just ridiculous. They're expecting the impossible.
She already spends $1,800 a month to send her son to preschool in a class with 24 kids.
You say that you think childcare is a priority. You need to put your money where your mouth is. We need to see significant new funding to support childcare if we want this to work.
As for what happens if there's too much demand for fewer spaces, the government says children of frontline workers will get priority, with emergency childcare centres set to wind down June 26th. Miranda Redekop, CBC News, Toronto.
The leader of the provincial NDP says paid sick days are critical as the province enters the next stage of reopening.
Now here we are. Ontario's moving into a phase 2 of our reopening. But if people feel that they have to go to work sick, then phase 2, I fear, is going to fail. And of course,
Andrea Horvath was speaking during a virtual press conference with health workers. She's calling on the Ford government to provide paid sick days to all Ontario workers. Shortly after coming into office, the government repealed legislation giving workers 2 paid sick days a year. Ontario's reopening plan has some apparent contradictions that have got some people talking. For example, limits are being eased on places of worship, but not for weddings and funerals. Our Queen's Park reporter Mike Crawley is digging into why.
A springtime wedding in pre-pandemic times, a happy occasion for everyone. Funerals, a necessary rite of passage for all cultures. Attendance at both is restricted in Ontario under COVID-19 laws. Yet restrictions are now being relaxed for routine services, whether in a church, a mosque, or a temple, under the province's new rules. For a regular worship service, the building can fill to 30% of its capacity, allowing people to gather in the dozens. However, for a funeral or a wedding, the maximum number allowed is 10. What's the logic?
Yeah, so I asked the same question, Mike.
And the answer he got?
When it comes to weddings, people congregate from all over the province, depending on who's invited, and for tracing purposes, it's a lot harder to track someone opposed to a church that everyone has to sign in.
People who run funerals in Ontario say it makes no sense to keep a 10-person limit in place when church services can be far larger.
There's a lot of frustration, and rightly so, because this is such a serious thing. You know, you only lose your loved one once. There's no redo on this. So that time in your life only happens then. And, If we can't address that and help people at the most difficult time in their lives, I think that's a shame, really.
There are other questions about Ontario's reopening plan. Consider Niagara Region and Waterloo Region, both equally close to the GTA with similar populations. There are 80 active confirmed cases of COVID-19 in Waterloo Region. It moves to Stage 2 on Friday. Niagara Region has 79 active cases, but it stays with Stage 1 restrictions in place. What's the explanation? Cases in Niagara spiked recently, says Ford.
A big chunk of that was migrant workers, but still, when the the numbers shoot up, our medical team, we have no choice.
One other contradiction: in places that stay at Stage 1, you can get a massage, but you still can't get your hair cut. Mike Crawley, CBC News, Toronto.
Another family is speaking out tonight against a GTA long-term care home that's struggling with a deadly COVID-19 outbreak. Woodbridge Vista Care Community was recently put under government control, and members of the military called in to help. But as Chris Glover tells us in this exclusive story, the family of a man who died at the home is pointing to a coroner's report as proof that neglect and not COVID-19 caused his death.
This is how Pietro Brucoleri's family says they last saw him at his nursing home.
We left him 3 months ago, plump and rosy in the cheeks and eating like a champ.
As COVID ravished Woodbridge Vista Care Community, the nursing home was put in lockdown. Brucoleri's family could no longer help support him, but consistently were told the 82-year-old with advanced dementia tested negative for the virus and was doing fine. Suddenly, May 29th, they got a call he was dying.
And we knew that one day this would happen, but not in this care. I did not expect this at all.
A coroner's report lists his cause of death as inanition, which means exhaustion caused by lack of nourishment.
This was Mommy's birthday.
When they got to say goodbye, his daughters say his gaunt, cold body lay in a stiflingly hot room.
Very heartbreaking, devastated, disgusted.
We did not expect the neglect.
They might say dehydration, they might say malnutrition, but rarely do you say inanition.
A Toronto geriatrician says malnutrition is a common ending for dementia patients, but he suspects the coroner used the rare phrase inanition for emphasis.
When they looked at the body, that they were struck by how malnourished it looked. That would be my guess.
Let me take your question now.
Last week, during a virtual town hall, families raised concerns about the quality of care, and a top executive at the home was recorded afterwards bad-mouthing families. A day later, it was announced she no longer worked there.
Takeovers Woodbridge Vista!
Still, families protested at the home. The province seized control, and the army's been called in to help. The home's operator won't comment on what happened to Brucoleri, but in a statement said, "We are closely monitoring all residents and continue to provide supports."
I feel like we failed him.
Compounding their grief, the Brucoleris had gone to take their dad to the hospital in April, but the home assured them he was safe. Now, they plan to sue.
Our father is gone, but I will keep fighting for him and all those beautiful people in that home.
Chris Glover, CBC News, Toronto.
Thousands of Ontario healthcare workers have been infected with COVID-19. One of them, a longtime Thornhill personal support worker, got sick after working in a home with an outbreak. She survived, but her partner of 40 years died from the illness. Lauren Pelly brings us their story.
This is the garden, the peony bush, planted years ago by Danilo Torres. For Felicidad Malolas, it's now a painful reminder that he's gone.
I'm so stressed and blaming myself, probably because I got the virus. And if I didn't get the virus, maybe he will not die or something. He will not get it.
Malolas is a personal support worker. She believes she got COVID-19 in April at the outbreak-stricken Vaughan home where she works. She says staff didn't always have access to PPE. Soon after, her husband got sick as well.
They put him directly to the ICU. Sabi ko, why? They said this oxygen is so low already. That's why when we put him in the car, he was so weak.
That was the last time Malolas saw him while he was still conscious. Torres died in hospital at the end of May. The couple had been together for 40 years.
We didn't have any closure to say goodbye or anything.
So far, more than 5,000 Ontario healthcare workers have tested positive for COVID-19, making up around 17% of all cases. But it's not clear how many of them are bringing the virus home to their families. When asked about it, the province promised to continue providing personal protective equipment.
I know that there have been some situations where it hasn't been made available to the frontline workers in whatever location where they're working, so we are dealing with that.
My husband, we were, he's easygoing.
Malolas is hoping workers like her have more protection down the line, even though it's too late to prevent her own husband's death.
I was so sad. Layers and layers of stress is coming to my head, and I don't know what to do.
Lauren Pelly, CBC News, Thornhill.
Toronto Public Health says so far there has been no evidence that the large crowds at Trinity Bellwoods Park a few weeks ago led to increased COVID-19 cases. Now, the health agency made that claim in a tweet on May 23rd. Thousands packed into Trinity Bellwoods without social distancing or wearing masks. That forced the city to later add social distancing circles in the park. However, Ontario health officials are waiting a few more days to see if there is an impact.
We'll have to see how we observe that. And as in the past, we've seen blips every Thursday related to some of our long weekends as the weather has improved. And our data tells that more and more people are getting more and more mobile and out of the home, especially on those warmer, long weekends.
Public Health did say 65% of the cases reported in Toronto since that day are from a close contact and urge everyone to stay with members of your own household when going outside. CBC Toronto has learned that the City of Toronto didn't issue a single ticket during the provincial ban on short-term rentals, despite nearly 200 complaints. The ban was brought in back in April to help prevent transmission of COVID-19. But as Farah Morelli tells us, residents at one building say people were violating the ban for months.
At the height of the pandemic, the Ontario government moved to restrict short-term rentals. So unless you were a healthcare provider or someone in need of emergency housing, you wouldn't be able to rent a place on sites like Airbnb. But it seems not everyone was following the rules. We learned the City of Toronto received 178 complaints during the 2-month ban. It completed 131 investigations, and in a little more than half of those cases, bylaw officers found there was a violation and even issued a warning. The number of fines that were actually handed out was 0.
That's been the source of frustration for people living here at 300 Front Street West. More than a half dozen residents told us for months they've been dealing with crowded elevators, people bringing in luggage, and a steady stream of newcomers, all while people were supposed to be physically distancing because of COVID.
We've had partying in our hallways as well too, because apparently these partiers were not satisfied partying inside their unit. They had to take it outside in the hallways. And we've had fights that have had to involve the police to come in to break up the fights. And this is all during the pandemic. We've spent 2 months voicing our concerns, calling everyone that will listen to help us out with the situation. No one has enforced the bylaw. No one has taken action.
20% of the complaints to the entire city came from Winston Ma's building. So why weren't any tickets issued here or anywhere in the city?
Totally understand the frustration, but at this time, we are seeing compliance and we are seeing the notices being effective.
You're opening up this Pandora's box.
Residents like Ma now worry it's only going to get worse.
Keep in mind, these complaints were coming in while the ban was still in place. It's now been lifted. In a statement to CBC Toronto, the Ministry of Housing and Municipal Affairs told us that it hopes that guests and short-term rental operators will comply with physical distancing and hand-washing rules. It's just not clear if that's going to be enforced. Farah Morelli, CBC News, Toronto.
A rally was held at Queen's Park today to demand the government puts a permanent ban on evictions during the COVID-19 pandemic. This comes as the province puts forward a motion to stop business evictions.
No eviction! No eviction! Tenants united! Tenants united!
The thing is that we don't understand why there seems to be so much concern for commercial tenants while there is seemingly very little concern for residential tenants in this city who have already been in crisis with high rents and a minimum wage that hasn't risen along with it. And so now we feel that COVID-19 has just decimated our economic prospects. And we are left wondering, why is no one coming to our aid? Why is no one helping us? We're out here screaming for help and they don't seem to listen.
The social distance protest was organized by Keep Your Rent Toronto and is calling on the province to stop evictions for any tenant that's unable to pay rent. Yesterday, the province proposed a legislation that would make it illegal to evict commercial tenants who qualify for assistance until the end of August. The group today says they are hoping the government will put a ban on all evictions in the province. Tomorrow, MPs will return to the House of Commons to examine a proposal from the Trudeau government on financial support programs for Canadians. One of them is the CERB, intended to help those who lost all income because of the pandemic shutdown. The NDP fears the proposal will criminalize people who wrongly applied. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says they are not the target.
We're not looking at punishing people who made honest mistakes. But unfortunately, in every situation, there are a few criminals who will deliberately try to take advantage, and we've put measures in place that will allow us to go after the deliberate fraudsters who are trying to game the system.
The terms of the bill are still under discussion with opposition parties, but the draft says applications based on false or misleading information or made by those who knowingly failed to disclose sources of income will be penalized. Offenders could face fines of up to $5,000 plus a penalty of up to twice that amount of the income support wrongly claimed. A 6-month jail term is also a possibility. Still not complaining, Colette.
Nope, I'm not complaining either. Now, maybe tomorrow we're going to feel it a little more. Still, we won't be complaining. But yeah, we've got this heat warning in place. The heat's there. More humidity, though, tomorrow to go along with it. So that's why we have the heat warning. By tomorrow, it's going to feel like those humidex values getting closer, not just to 38, but closer to even 40. And I have to tell you today, the hot spot again going to Markham, Ontario, 32.7. You have to, it's tied with Windsor, actually, this afternoon. But not just a hot spot in Ontario, a hot spot in Canada, again, with some of this heat that we're seeing. Now, the problem with adding some more moisture to the air for tomorrow and that sticky nature of it is that when we get a cold front coming in late in the day, we have the risk of seeing some severe weather. So scattered strong storms possible, all the areas in orange from eastern Ontario back to southwestern Ontario. There's a risk in the morning, but it's enhanced actually with the storms that are going to come through with the cold front later in the day. I'm going to go into more detail on that coming up. For now, you know, we don't have to worry about it. It's a nice evening ahead of us, albeit a warm one, but still lots of sunshine out there. The sun doesn't set till 2 minutes to 9 o'clock. Our current temperatures holding in there at 30 degrees. We looked at our dew points yesterday. We had lots of single digits. Now they've come up into the teens. Tomorrow, you're going to see them in the higher teens and low 20s, but still we have a humidex of 34, so it still feels sticky. But it's going to be much soupier there, that air mass. You're going to notice it in the morning. You may also be woken up by a little bit of rumble of thunder tomorrow morning, some heavier downpours. But the busier part of the day is going to be late in the day. I'll go into that, as I say, and give you all the details, walk you through it coming up.
Okay, one complaint. We don't like soupy air. Thanks, Colette.
Soupy or heavy downpours, yeah.
See you later.
All right.
Weather is brought to you by Trane, the most reliable heating and cooling brand. We test, so it runs. Take advantage of special offers now. It's hard to stop a train.
A domestic dispute call brought York Police to a home in the Highway 27 and Langstaff area last night. A short time later, a 35-year-old man who lived in the home was dead. Now the province's Special Investigations Unit is probing what happened. Alicia Son has more.
I'm so surprised and heavy-hearted when I hear this news.
The 35-year-old man who lives in this house with his family died last night after the police showed up.
Last night I see 3 ambulances and about 20 cops around.
Police were called to the home on the usually quiet Jade Crescent for a domestic dispute. They say they had information that the man was trying to light a fire inside the house. It was around 11 o'clock when the first officer entered. They had what was described as an interaction. Monica Hutton with the Special Investigations Unit gives their take on what happened next.
Soon after the first officer arrived at the residence, there was an interaction between the officer and a man. Other officers then arrived and assisted with the man's arrest. The man became vital signs absent, and officers provided medical assistance until paramedics arrived.
The SIU takes over an investigation when a police officer is involved in a person's death. One officer sustained minor injuries in the altercation.
The husband was always, very nice and cordial with me. Only good things to say about them, so I'm very shocked and surprised that this happened.
Neighbors say he lived with his wife and 2 young children. Other neighbors say they have seen the man behave strangely in the past.
Police were here not too long ago, but I never heard anything that happened.
The SIU's duty is to investigate what happened, the use of force, and how the man ended up dead. Ali Chiasson, CBC News, Toronto.
A man who went to the anti-black racism protest at Nathan Phillips Square on Saturday in blackface has been charged. Police arrested 28-year-old Davis Tambari for breach of the peace, and he is now facing a charge of causing a disturbance. The final service honoring George Floyd was held in Houston today. The funeral and burial capped 6 days of mourning in several cities for the man whose murder in police custody triggered a worldwide movement against racial injustice. 500 people attended the invitation-only tribute, including family, friends, and dignitaries to remember Floyd and make sure his life holds meaning even in death. Our Stephen D'Souza was there.
He was a pesky little rascal, but we all loved him.
George Floyd's family remembered him as someone larger than life.
I love you, and I thank God for giving me my own personal Superman.
The final service for George Floyd was as much a celebration of his life as it was a call to action.
Make sure that we do not walk away today after having celebrated his life and not taken the next step to commemorate and to assure the future generations that this won't happen again.
Vice President Joe Biden made a video appearance, speaking at one point to Floyd's daughter, Gianna.
When there is justice for George Floyd, we will truly be on our way to racial justice in America. And then, as you said, Gianna, your daddy will have changed the world.
The mother of Eric.
Other families who've known tragedy were in attendance. The mother of Trayvon Martin, Eric Garner's mother. Many here are devout Christians and see Floyd's death as God giving him a mission. Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee.
And that purpose was around the world, that there are people rising up that will never sit down until you get justice.
Reverend Al Sharpton promised to stay with the family on the long road to justice.
Lives like George will not matter until somebody pays the cost for taking their lives.
After the service, the casket was taken to his final resting place, beside his late mother. Hundreds lined the street to say goodbye.
I wanted to be the part of something that's the beginning of something that can be really big. Like, this whole situation is changing the world, and I'm just glad that we can be out here and be a part of it.
A final goodbye for a man who sparked a movement that's destined to live on. Stephen D'Souza, CBC News, Houston.
When we return, we introduce you to the first recipient of a crowdfunded scholarship to help black students here in Toronto.
There've been many, I can see there's been many distractions in my life that have almost thrown me off my grind, getting towards where I am today. And all I can say is just keep working hard and just never lose sight of what you're working for.
In response to systemic racism and barriers that face the Black community, a Toronto high school teacher has launched a scholarship to help Black students with post-secondary education. Karina Thomas Reynolds was hoping to help one student out this year with a grant of around $1,500, but with the help of the community, they are now looking at supporting even more. We went to meet the first recipient of the Reynolds Scholarship, whose family fled from Rwanda in 1996.
Matthew, on behalf of my daughter and I and our Reynolds Foundation, we want to present this check to you for your excellent work and your commitment to your education.
Last year, my father and I began the Reynolds Scholarship as a response to the social inequities that happen in our education system. This year, because of the current events that have been happening, we have been receiving an overwhelming amount of support, and we just hope that we can spread a positive message of the immense amount of resilience that Black students endure in order to succeed.
Everybody knows what happened in 1994. There was genocide. I got a chance to come to Canada. It was a reset for me and start a new life. And I'm grateful. I'm grateful to what's going on to my family.
My dad has always told me from a young age, even before he put me into soccer, that education was always the top priority. Like, even though he wanted me to succeed in soccer and to take it far, even go pro, he always told me that I'd always need like an education as my background, just in case anything goes wrong. So education has always been the top priority in my family.
He's one of those kids that really want to do well at everything, and he's more mature compared to other kids of his age, and we're praying that he's going to stay who he is and nothing, his success and everything is going to change, is not going to change him.
I can see there's been many distractions in my life that have almost thrown me off my grind, like getting towards where I am today. And all I can say is just keep working hard and just never lose sight of what you're working for.
Congratulations. Best of luck ahead. After the break, the latest blow to campus life because of COVID-19. University and college sports have been canceled. Plus,
it's not only about the kids and the families, it's about the instructors, it's about the communities.
As we told you earlier, summer camps are getting the go-ahead here in Ontario, but what will camp life in COVID look like? We head to camps outside the province to find out. A big blow for university and college athletes in Ontario. Yesterday, athletic associations announced that all varsity sports would be cancelled until at least next year. Greg Ross spoke with some athletes who are now contemplating how this will impact their future in competition.
The first thing that kind of went through my head was, this is sad.
Christian Puyol-Genesar was getting set for his second season on the University of Toronto baseball team. He says being a part of the team is a big part of his identity at school.
I spend a lot of my time in the gym, in practice. I carry around a baseball glove with me. It's going to be pretty hard to kind of focus and really kind of scratch that itch of that you really want to play.
Aiden D'Souza knows the feeling. He's a cross-country runner at Seneca College.
Sports is a big motivation to do better in school, right? You have something to look forward to, right, other than school.
And without a season, they have nothing to train for.
That's like what many athletes are going through right now, looking for that goal, looking to compete, looking to win medals.
The reason they play sports is because they want to compete.
Jeremy Choi and Clance Layler run the LPS Athletic Center, a high-performance strength and conditioning gym that works with a number of professional and university athletes. They say this pandemic will definitely put many of these athletes to the test.
There's a difference between the mentally strong athletes, who will succeed in the long run, right? Or the ones who fall to the wayside. You have to double down. You have to figure it out.
Both the OUA and OCAA have canceled varsity sports through the end of this year. Puyol-Genesar says there are rumblings of trying to fit some sort of season in to the second semester.
There have definitely been talks through our team, and we're thinking about talking to our coaching staff, maybe talking to other teams as well about promoting the possibility of a spring season. Then again, it's not up to us.
If that isn't an option, then this will mean the end of the line for many varsity athletes, like D'Souza, who is entering his final year at Seneca.
I don't get to compete. I don't get to finish it. I won't have that ending.
Greg Ross, CBC News, Toronto.
The City of Toronto is expanding its bike share program as membership numbers continue to increase.
We hit a new all-time record this past weekend, for example, with the highest number of rides on a single weekend. There were over 36,000 trips taken on the 6th and 7th of June of this year. And we had the highest ridership day ever on May 23rd of this year. This is the kind of momentum we want to build on. This is the kind of momentum that justifies the additional investment in this program and what it stands for and what it's able to provide by way of transportation options.
More than 1,800 new bicycles and 160 stations are being added this year. The city is hoping all corners of Toronto will have access to bike share. It is also looking at adding e-bikes to its fleet, launching as a pilot program later this summer. The city has previously announced a significant increase in bike lanes, adding about 40 kilometers of new additional lanes this year. Most of the new lanes are considered temporary and will be reviewed next year. While there may not be overnight camps this summer, today Ontario joined forces with other provinces in announcing that summer day camps will be allowed to open. It's good news for the kids who have spent months isolated from friends without organized activities, and as Deanna Sumanak-Johnson tells us, it could spell relief for parents as well.
Well, what if we have sun on one side and then a rain cloud on this side?
This was not the kind of nature that parenting blogger Misty Pratt envisioned her girls spending their summer in. Aileen, who's almost 11, was looking forward to going to her Girl Guides of Canada camp, but it was canceled.
So she was really disappointed. It had come on top of a few other disappointments as well. We had a trip planned to Florida for April that obviously had to be canceled. So I think it was just one thing after the other.
Overnight camps will remain closed.
Overnight camps have been canceled throughout much of Canada, but some day camps are going ahead. In New Brunswick, they've opened earlier than usual.
With schools not open here in New Brunswick, there was certainly an opportunity and I would argue even the need that kids need to connect.
Camp Centennial already had small groups, 15 kids tops, and it hasn't had to change too much. But group sizes may have to be even smaller and physical distancing more stringent in areas with higher infection rates. Pedalhead's day camps may have a way to work, or rather ride, around that problem.
We'll actually have hula hoops out for each child in order to keep them separated.
Pedalheads will run camps across Canada, which also means jobs for young Canadians.
It's not only about the kids and the families, it's about the instructors, it's about the communities.
Okay. Another initiative to make this strange summer better, rent a counselor. Parents can hire camp counselors to come to them and provide a few hours of activities for the kids.
Our counselors will be wearing masks. They will be wiping down a ball. So for example, if you have basketball and it's just one counselor to one camper, there'll be 2 basketballs.
Ideas for kids who, after a rough spring, are facing a disappointing summer, and parents who, in addition to the pressures of homeschooling, may otherwise have to play camp counselor as well. Deanna Sumanak-Johnson, CBC News, Toronto.
We only get a few months of this warm weather. This is camp weather, Colette. Those poor kids.
Oh, it is camp weather. That's right, Dwight. After our talk earlier, I had already made this graphic, but I had to go back and change it and put soupy in because I know how much Dwight loves that. Yeah, it's going to be humid tomorrow. It's going to feel really soupy when you wake up, and you're going to notice how sticky it is. So still the heat, but now we're adding some higher dew points here. Strong storm risk, and I'll walk you through the timing on that. Very important. And windy conditions tomorrow at times. There'll be some breaks, but it's going to be breezy, and then into Thursday as well. So the risk of some severe storms, a moderate risk from eastern Ontario to southwestern Ontario, north into cottage country, and down to the Niagara, and of course includes the GTA in there. These are our current temperatures. We're still holding at 30 degrees. What an evening we have on our hands, right? 34, the humidex. Now tomorrow, that's going to be approaching 40 in terms of how it's going to feel into those afternoon hours, and that's why it does become serious, and you really do have to take those breaks and make sure that you have lots of water. The remnants of our tropical depression pushing northward, so it's essentially this warm front that's going to be going through overnight tonight, bringing us some thunderstorms, but then a second system and this cold front will be going through late in the day tomorrow, and that's where I see the enhanced risk for strong storms or severe weather. So this comes through in the overnight tonight by about 5-6 a.m. You may hear the rumble of thunder, some heavier downpours to the north of the GTA into cottage country, then a midday break, but some sun coming through. That daytime heating is going to really destabilize the atmosphere, and then as the cold front approaches us as we get towards the late afternoon, evening hours, probably later evening with some of the stronger storms. So some torrential rain is possible, but we're also looking at winds that the gusts could exceed 100 kilometers an hour, and the risk of tornadic activity. I'll be here to walk you through all of that. Your temperatures tonight, those are lows that are kind of closer to daytime highs. One of those situations again, so not much relief overnight. And there you are tomorrow afternoon, some low 30s, feeling like 40, way above seasonal, about 10 degrees above seasonal. It does cool down after that. So those of you who are uncomfortable with the soupy air, it will leave us.
Thank you, Colette.
You're welcome.
You can now pick up some masks with your drive-through fast food order in Alberta. The provincial government has signed a deal with McDonald's, Tim Hortons, and A&W to distribute them.
Hi, can I just get a small coffee with 2 cream and 1 sugar and some masks?
Hi.
Hi there.
Have a nice day.
Thank you very much.
That's one of our CBC Edmonton colleagues trying it out. You don't have to buy anything to get a free 4-pack of non-medical masks. The Alberta government is providing 20 million of them to more than 600 fast food outlets. It's also making them available to regions that aren't within 10 kilometers of a fast food drive-through. There is a limit of 1 pack per person. Theater, film, late-night DJs, local Indigenous artists, and a burlesque performance. This year's Luminata Festival is going ahead with more than 20 hours of free arts programming online. Yelena Adzik joins us now to help us navigate through the 3 days of arts and culture. So let's start with some of the highlights. What can we look forward to, Yelena?
Well, I know some people will be looking forward to the burlesque troupe that you mentioned, Dwight. Let me give you a bit of a sizzle reel that they provided, a sneak peek, and just mention that the troupe we're talking about, they're called Les Femmes Fatales, Women of Color Burlesque Troupe. And so they're on tap to be a part of this. Also this year, they're bringing back the 2019 festival hit. This is a cabaret concert called The Cave, and it features work from renowned Indigenous Canadian playwright Thompson Highway. So a lot of people will be looking forward to that. Now, I personally cannot wait to see and hear this. Misha Brugger-Gossman, many know her as our wonderful soprano extraordinaire. Well, she's going to be doing something called the Singing Salmon, an edible performance. Now, there's no fun in me spoiling what this is all about, Dwight, but I just know that there's going to be singing and cooking involved. And whenever Misha Bruegger-Gossman is involved in anything, I say I'm in. She's just such a great time, and what an incredible voice. So that'll be fun. And then My One Demand. This is an interesting one because it's a short film that's all shot with one camera shot, and it just follows various people around the city of Toronto as they're walking down the street, where you hear a narrator who it really takes us through a stream of consciousness of their thoughts, and they think about love, loneliness, racial injustice, as well as personal self-worth. So that will be online for free, and again, that's called My One Demand. Another one to share with you, Hoop Dancer. We're going to take a look at Nimkinini, also known as Thunderman, because this is the person who's closing out Luminato with a performance on Sunday. And Nimkinini is Ottawa Potawatomi and a member of the Wolf Clan. So a lot of people are keen on seeing that performance. And then I have to share the fact that on Friday night until 2 a.m., Dwight, there's going to be a massive dance party. How, you say? Online? Yes, Dwight, online. You can kind of tune in through Zoom. And there's a whole bunch of DJs. And such one, for example, is Osiris Marcus Ware. And there is a really prominent focus on Black Lives Matter. And like I say, that's going to be kicking off until the wee hours of the night. You can watch and also participate via Zoom. So there's just such a variety on tap for everybody.
Sounds like something for me and the kids to do in the basement. Okay. Now, at the core of Luminato is accessibility. That's what the mandate is all about. None of that highbrow stuff. So the events are, of course, free. But it's also about being inclusive. So what project exemplifies then that?
Okay, so in that case, let's really take a focus for right now at a project from Alex Ballmer. Now, this is one called May I Take Your Arm? And Alex Ballmer is an interdisciplinary artist whose life and art has really been influenced and informed by the fact of blindness. So I'm going to give you a little bit of a snippet of that right now.
In April of this year, I moved to a part of the city I did not know at all. May I take your arm?
May I take your arm?
Sure.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, I'll take your right one. May I take your arm is the first thing I said to people as I walked through my new neighborhood. May I take your arm?
Absolutely. Now, just to let you know, I am in the power wheelchair.
May I take your arm?
Yes, of course. Which one?
We walked. Go for a walk together.
Go for a walk.
We talked.
Do you know where you are? No. So why don't we?
It was all an attempt to help me understand where in the world I had landed.
So where?
So that's a little bit from Alex Ballmer. Now, they are the co-artistic director of Common Boots Theatre here in Toronto. And what's really neat about this, when you talk about accessibility, Dwight, is the fact that this particular show is going to be live streamed. This is a version of what you just saw there, a bit of snippet of May I Take Your Arm. And if you're tuning in on Zoom and you happen to be blind, you're going to be able to hear it. There's going to be an audio description of everything that's going on. So again, just one way that Luminato tries to put inclusivity at the top of the lineup and consideration. Dwight?
Brilliant. Love that. Thank you, Elena.
Yeah. We'll see you soon.
Police in Nova Scotia say a woman was killed by her dog as she was out walking the animal this morning. The dog, described as a large pit bull, ran away after the attack. It was later struck and killed by a motorist. Kayla Hounsel has more.
Jocelyn Parker was taking her German Shepherd puppy to doggy daycare so it could learn to socialize when she came upon the scene. A car parked on the side of the road, a dog in the distance standing on the yellow line, and a young girl waving her over.
And she said, "There's a lady laying in the ditch." And I said, "What?" She said, "I think she's dead."
That girl was 15-year-old Kiana Borden, out for a morning jog. She ran past the woman and her dog, and everything seemed fine. But when she returned,
I go to step over, and the dog comes at me, and I'm telling him to back down because there's no I'm not gonna hurt him. And then I see the woman in the ditch.
She called 911. Multiple witnesses, including police officers, described the dog as a pit bull, but the RCMP says it cannot confirm the breed.
It was quite scary. He was very on guard and protective, but he seemed kind of nice. He didn't want to hurt me, but he knew that there was something wrong.
Parker encouraged police to alert the public, which they did.
Obviously, I felt very bad that this was this woman's fate, but I didn't want anybody any further getting injured.
While Parker was still at the scene, the dog was still on the loose, and it was near her home here on this dirt road that the animal was struck by a car and killed.
When I drove up the McFettridge Road, I saw it, and I seen the pit bull. I knew it was the dog instantly, and I didn't concern myself. I took care of the dog, and it was quick.
Mark Taylor heard the news and says killing the dog was the right thing to do.
It could have hurt someone else, and people's lives are more important than the dog's life.
Police say their investigation continues. The witnesses say they are thinking of the victim's family during this very difficult time. Kayla Hounsel, CBC News, Chatswood, Nova Scotia.
After the break, today's Frontline Hero. We'll be right back. As a wig specialist at Princess Margaret Hospital, Lori Tucker helps people regain their confidence after losing their hair due to radiation therapy. But with the COVID-19 pandemic closing down the salon, she shifted to helping the hospital in new ways.
I help women and men that are going with the side effects appearances that are related to treatment, which the first thing is, of course, loss of hair. And that's very traumatic to a lot of women. And surprisingly, we get quite a few men that come in too, and they're not very happy to lose their hair. So that's been my main job since 2005. It's very rewarding. I have always loved my job. I have always loved walking in the door of Princess Margaret. I'm like supporting people. I'm helping people. I'm chatting with people. And of course, we had to shutter our doors when the COVID came out because obviously it's physical distancing. Because when you're doing a wig appointment, you're touching and you're very close to the patient and all of that. So unfortunately, we had to close the wig salon. So I became a runner. So I was running food up to the inpatient floors. I was helping with patients if they didn't know where they were going and their caregiver couldn't come with them. I would get them in the wheelchair, take them to their appointments, let them know that everything's good. And then my team leader approached me and said, I would love you to be a supervisor 2 days a week. So then I became a supervisor for the frontline screen. For the first time, I felt, in my words, that I had to put safety before compassion. And that's a hard thing for myself to do. And I know all my coworkers that work within Princess Margaret, we've always, we put compassion first and foremost. And for the first time, we had to put safety sort of just kind of resting on top of it, still with compassion, but just keeping the hospital and our patients as safe as possible during this pandemic.
Tucker's neighbors wanted us to recognize her not only for this work, but for what she does on her off hours. In an email, Dave and Liz Ashby said she cares for the many seniors in her apartment building, adding, Lori keeps an eye on all of us, bringing home groceries and anything else we may need. She calls us the elderberries, and her visits and phone calls are on the main elements in keeping us sane during this crisis. So, Miss Lori, round of applause and thank you.
Yeah, I just love her compassion, just so beautiful. Yeah, we love these stories, of course. Well, something that's not so lovable, perhaps, is severe weather. And we do have the risk for this into Wednesday. Now, there's the potential in the morning hours as we're going to have a warm front coming through, but that's really increasing into the afternoon with the daytime heating we're going to have. We have very buoyant air that's going to be here because the humidity is going to be up. And when that cold front carves through later in the day, that's where we could really see some strong storms. So the risk of getting some torrential downpours coming through and some wind gusts exceeding 100 kilometers an hour, all of that now for the GTA, that's going to be more towards the evening hours, a little bit more towards dinner time or late afternoon back towards southwestern Ontario. What you can do, though, is enjoy this evening. I know it's still hot out there. Temperature will come down to about 27 degrees. The sun sets just before 9 o'clock. It's overnight, and it's not till late overnight. So I'm talking about towards 5 a.m., 6 a.m. We will likely hear the rumble of some thunder, heavier amounts of rain, some those downpours just to the north of the GTA. 19 is the low tonight, so it's pretty muggy overnight tonight. And we get into that stickier air tomorrow. 32, feeling like 40. And we'll be kind of bookended with the rain and thunderstorms early and then again late, Dwight.
A lot of active weather. Thank you, Colette.
You're welcome.
That is our show for tonight. Thank you for joining us. Marvell Tarouk has your next local news tonight at 11, right after the National. We will see you back here tomorrow at 6. Stay safe and have a great night, everybody.